This meeting is now being recorded.
Great. So this way, folks who weren't able to join us, I know there were several today who had other conflicts but wanted to hear the recording, or if you'd like to revisit this later or share with a colleague, you will be able to do so. It takes a couple of days for the recording to come through, so as always, I will send an email out to the whole group when the recording is available, and I will put that up on our Google Drive site. So, like always, everyone should be seeing a tree or a nature scene. I've gone ahead and put everyone on mute, so in case you want to type notes or someone pops into your office, we won't have any disruptions. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button, which is in the top rightish area of your screen. It's two chat bubbles, orange and white. You can also go ahead and use the public chat section over on the bottom left to type a question. Feel free to type those out during the presentation. Cassie Brooks, our fabulous group coordinator from the Chicago Housing Authority, will be monitoring those and will ask them to the presenters at the end of their presentations. So feel free to type it at any time, and if you'd like to ask it privately as opposed to publicly, that's totally up to you. We'll take about 2 to 3 questions after each presentation, and then if there's time at the very end, we can ask and answer more questions. If we don't have time to get to your question, definitely follow up with me or Cassie after, and we can get you connected to the presenters. I think that's pretty much everything. We do have a roundtable, which as a reminder is more of a small group discussion as opposed to the presentation format, coming up in a few weeks, so please be on the lookout for an email from me about that. Cassie?
Great. Thanks, Abra. So yes, my name is Cassie Brooks. I'm here as the working group facilitator for this year, and we have a couple great guests joining us today to talk a little more, and we wanted to have Joaquin Tamayo start us off first from the U.S. Department of Education and the Office of Elementary and Secondary Ed to help us understand a bit more about our initiative towards chronic absenteeism. So Joaquin, you there?
I am. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. And we'll be monitoring the public chat as well as the question box, so you just go ahead and present, and we'll filter in those questions as they come.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Joaquin Tamayo. I am from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. And I'd like to start by just thanking CLPHA for inviting us to present on the Every Student, Every Day initiative to address and eliminate chronic absenteeism, and really look forward to engaging everybody on the webinar today, during the webinar, and then after, should there be questions about how your public housing authority or agency might get involved in supporting and participating in the Every Student, Every Day initiative. Just as some context and background about my own career, I'm a former high school teacher and former high school principal before I joined the department, and I work on issues related to student supports, school discipline and climate improvements, and dropout prevention. So that's how I've been getting involved in the issue of chronic absenteeism. I'm very excited to share with you what we're doing not only at the U.S. Department of Education, but across a number of federal agencies, and as you'll see now, across the country. So in terms of an agenda for my brief presentation, I'd like to first start off discussing, what chronic absenteeism is. It's a term of art, I guess, at this point in the education field that's not really well known in lots of places. So we'll just go over that, as well as some data on chronic absenteeism that I think would be good to share with this group. I'll follow that by a brief explication of what the Every Student, Every Day initiative is, how it's related to the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative, and then I'll end with a brief update on a new campaign. It is a national media awareness campaign that we are partnering up with the Ad Council and the Mott Foundation to support, called Absences Add Up. So I want to make sure that I let you know about that. because that will be launching officially next month across the country. And then, of course, we'll have some time, I hope, for questions from our audience. So why does school attendance matter? That's a question that I think on the surface sounds pretty easy to answer. But really, when you dig into the issue of students who miss lots of school, and that's who we're talking about when we talk about chronic absenteeism, it gets much more complicated. And it's not as simple as, just telling kids to go to school or telling families that their kids should be in school. It really does come down to working with students and families to figure out when there are challenges to daily school attendance, how to meet those challenges, how our sectors, whether it's education or housing or health or justice, can really work together to support all of our students, especially those who struggle the most and who are the most vulnerable to falling behind and eventually dropping out of school. So we'll start with, what is chronic absenteeism? Like I said, it's kind of a term of art, sort of wonky. When you say chronic absenteeism, the person on the street, they may not know what you're talking about. But for purposes of this webinar, and to be clear about how we're defining chronic absenteeism here at ED and across the federal government, chronic absenteeism, or missing at least 10% of school days in a school year for any reason, excused or unexcused. So, just being out of school, whether that's because of a family emergency, an illness, a family vacation, or being suspended from school, or being pulled out of school for another reason, it doesn't matter. Missing at least 10% or more of school days in a school year roughly translates to about 18 days with a typical school year, is what we define as chronic absenteeism. And we know from a really strong body of research over the last 20 years that chronic absenteeism, missing school that much, is a primary cause of low academic achievement among students and a powerful predictor of those students who may eventually drop out of school. So when we know that students are missing that much school, not only can we predict that they're likely to have struggles moving forward, but they probably already do suffer and are challenged by low academic achievement because of their absence from school. A good heuristic to think about chronic absence is, missing even 2 days a month, which to a lot of people doesn't sound like a lot, but missing 2 days a month every single month for 9 months of a school year equals 18 days, and that's chronic absence. And so, we're not just talking about students who are so disengaged from school that they're missing weeks or even months at a time. We're talking about students who generally show up to school, but they miss enough school with enough regularity that they end up putting, or they're in a position to fall behind academically, socially, and as you'll see in the next couple of slides, students who do miss this much school, their rates of dropping out and being disaffected and disengaged are pretty tremendous, as we'll see. So to continue this sort of conversation about why attendance matters, this is a template for all of us adults. It's really important that we sort of understand, this pyramid. Attendance matters because over time, as children regularly attend school and succeed in school, they're attaining more, they're achieving more, and that ends up supporting their success in school over time and in life. But it really starts with advocacy for daily attendance from all of us, all of the adults, all of us who are in charge of supporting and helping our children develop in the healthiest way possible. So it's really up to us as advocates for daily attendance, as advocates for supports for students, as advocates for non-punitive approaches to getting kids engaged. That's really where it starts. And when we can advocate for that, we're going to see daily attendance improve. And as daily attendance improves, student achievement improves. And then when student achievement improves every single year, over time, their academic attainment and also their attainment of really critical social, emotional skills. Sometimes people call these 21st century skills, collaboration, listening skills, teamwork, problem solving. all of these skills that we know are essential to success in college and in the workplace in the 21st century, that's what we're aiming for. And it really does start with students being in school every single day and not missing, so that they're not at risk of falling behind or dropping out. So now we have a poll for those of you on the webinar today. We're curious if you know the chronic absence rate for your school, if you're connected to a school, your school district, if somehow you have a relationship with your school district, or even your state. Do you know that information, or do you know how to access that information? You may not know it, but you know where to get it. So I'll pause right there. I think I'm going to get some help with this poll, and I would love to see where this pans out on the webinar today.
Sorry, just bear with me 1 second here.
No problem. And if we can't, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm not totally sure what's going on with
that's okay. That's okay. So I just, looks, okay, I guess it's working.
Activated it. Hope that's okay.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Thanks, Cassie.
Sure.
So take another maybe 10 seconds to enter your response. All right, is there any way we could see the results?
You see that now or no?
I'm still seeing
the actual poll.
the poll.
Okay, well, I can share the results over the phone. So we've had 5 respondents. 4 said yes, and 1 said no.
Well, that's great. So that's very promising. Which means that not only do we have an understanding of at least some people on the webinar about what chronic absence is, but you know how to find that information. Unfortunately, pardon me, most states in this country still do not collect or report chronic absence data to stakeholders, and in particular to their schools and their school principals. Without that kind of data, it's really hard to understand the nature of the and the scope of the challenge. And so part of the Every Student Every Day initiative is raising awareness about chronic absenteeism and really encouraging folks to understand, what their local data say about how many students are missing this much school that they're really, going to fall off track academically and possibly drop out of the school. Without that kind of data, it's really hard to plan strategically the kinds of interventions and services and preventative services that could help mitigate the effects of chronic absenteeism. So I'm glad that those who were able to answer the poll, they do know where to find this information, and it's really important that everybody who's interested in supporting our children know how to access this information, and we're hoping that over the course of the next 10 months, as we continue to advance Every Student Every Day, more and more people are able to access that information. So in terms of the data, what does the research tell us about the nature of chronic absenteeism? This data is from a recent study of high school students in Utah. And as you can see from the table, students who were never chronically absent, had 0 years of chronic absenteeism between the 8th and the 12th grades, dropped out at a rate of 10.3%. So if the student, attended school, virtually all the time, 90% or so of those students eventually graduated from high school. But look at a student who was chronically absent for just 1 year between the 8th and the 12th grades. Just 1 year, which means that for 4 of the 5 years, they maintained good attendance. Their chances of dropping out of school increased 300% or more than 300%. So students who missed only or who were chronically absent for only 1 year, 36.4% of them eventually dropped out of school. And look at the numbers of students who were chronically absent for 2 or 3 or 4 years. So a student who was chronically absent who missed almost a month of school for 4 years between 8th and 12th grades had a better than 60% chance of dropping out. Now, if these were data related to a health condition or a disease or some other acute situation that a child would find himself or herself, we would be implementing solutions like you wouldn't believe. But absenteeism is sort of like a slow burn problem, and then we only end up trying to respond to students when, they are already at risk of dropping out at a 60% rate. So we're going to talk about the kinds of systems that'll help ameliorate the situation. But I just wanted people to get a sense of just how dramatic and cumulative chronic absenteeism, the effects of chronic absenteeism are on the achievement and success of our students. It's not just a K-12 or a pre-K-12 problem as well. It's really important to appreciate that students who are chronically absent from school, especially in the high school years, that has an effect on their college achievement. Now, we don't think about school attendance in elementary and high school as necessarily relating to post-secondary or college success, but if you take a look here, so students here in the green who had low rates of chronic absence, who were attending school virtually all the time, their their dropout rate out of college was about 28% of students left school within a year. Not great, but look at the orange bars. Those are students who are chronically absent from high school. In college, more than half of them dropped out within a year of attending college. And so, it has an effect. It's about habits. It's about knowing how to get help. It's about that connectedness that students develop while they're in primary and then in secondary school. And without those sort of routines and those support systems and that social capital, when they go to college, when they're much more on their own, they're much more likely to drop out of school. And then, that's not what anybody wants. And we know this from the data. So just another perspective on the incidence of chronic absenteeism and how it affects students throughout their academic careers and then later on into life. So what do we know about who's most affected by chronic absenteeism? We have some information on that based on NAEP data. That's the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And every year when students take that assessment, they answer a question, and I believe the question is, were you absent more than 3 days this month? And it's a basic yes or no response to that question. And so students who are, on average, responding to that question more often than other students are students who are low income, students who are Native American and Alaskan Native students who actually have the highest rates of chronic absenteeism across the country. Those are our African American or Black students, our Hispanic students, and our students with disabilities. So from the NAEP data, we know that these students self-report that they miss school more than other groups of students. So what contributes to chronic absence? Well, what we know from the data and the research as well is that chronic absence or absence from school generally is caused by a diverse range of factors. And these relate to education, unwelcoming school climates, bullying, bad instruction, to issues around housing and homelessness and safe neighborhoods, to chronic disease and acute illnesses, to students or families being wrapped up and involved in the juvenile justice or the criminal justice systems. So no child situation, no chronically absent student situation is alike. The challenge, however, is that our schools and other systems of support that we have in many of our communities are not well designed to deal with these challenges. They're not well designed to respond in a cross-sector, multi-level way to the unique and particular needs of our students. And, typically the way that schools respond to lots of these challenges is only until a student is manifesting their challenges in some sort of crisis situation, and that's what we might call sort of tier 3. But if schools and other institutions are only working with students or primarily working with students at that tier 3 level, not only is it really challenging for organizations, particularly those that are not well resourced or not well staffed or have inexperienced staff, to manage that level of need on the part of their children, it's also really expensive. And then schools have to make choices about who's going to get served and who's not going to get served. And then that just ends up amplifying the problem and really doesn't get at the root often of individual students' chronic absenteeism. And sometimes we can get to chronic absenteeism, we can reduce and eliminate chronic absenteeism when we apply these what we call tier 1 sort of universal interventions for students. But when we don't do those universal intervention, tier 1 interventions for students, or look to tier 2 for slightly more challenging situations, you'll have students who maybe missed a couple of days here and there, but because very little attention was paid to their unique situation, they end up in 2, 3, 6 months at a tier 3 crisis situation, which then just becomes that much harder for a school or another agency to help solve when they're already in crisis. And so the lack of these types of tiered cross-sector intervention systems, what we sometimes call early warning systems in the field, really does contribute to the incidence of chronic absenteeism. And so through Every Student Every Day, we're really trying to promote this idea, not just in schools and education, but really across sectors to support all of our students and their needs. So just quickly, the Every Student Every Day initiative is part of the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative to focus the nation on the challenges and also the opportunities to support our most vulnerable children, our low-income children, our students of color, and particularly our young men and boys of color who routinely are really suffering the worst outcomes out of our schools and out of many of our institutions. And so this is you should just know it's part of the MBK initiative, and we're happy to have the White House's support for Every Student Every Day. We launched the initiative last October at a great event here at a local elementary school here in D.C. Former Secretary Arne Duncan and Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Julian Castro were present to present attendance awards to elementary school students who had dramatically improved their attendance. And you should know that in a year's time, Patterson Elementary School, through a combination of cross-sector partnerships and intensive student supports and mental health services at the school, cut their chronic absent rate by almost half in a year. So it really is possible to make dramatic improvements for our children and for their families by implementing really smart, strategic, research-based interventions. We know what to do. We just need to make sure and help schools and institutions and communities everywhere implement these types of strategies. As part of the launch of the initiative, we released federal guidance, sort of 4 action steps that we recommended that states, school districts, schools, and communities implement to begin to develop their systems to respond to chronic absenteeism. And you should know, and you can access, I'll show you the link a little later on to access this guidance, but they do focus on positive messaging. This can't be a punitive exercise. We really have to be welcoming and engaging to students who are disengaged and disaffected from our schools for whatever reason. We need to have that data. We need to know exactly who's chronically absent and why they're chronically absent so we can begin to strategize in an effective way. We need to build the capacity of our people to manage this challenge. It's not enough to just tell a school staff or a staff of another agency, fix this. No, we need to really invest in effective training, professional development, and the kinds of incentives that get people motivated tackling this tough challenge. And then finally, we need shared accountability. this isn't just the responsibility of, or even within the power of individual schools to overcome. It really is a community responsibility that implicates all of our sectors and all of our systems to supporting our children. And so it was these sort of 4 action steps that the federal government has recommended to states, school districts, schools, and communities to begin implementing, if they haven't already, to really get at the root of chronic absence in their local communities. We believe, just to state the point once again, that meeting this challenge requires a multi-sector response. And so you may know this already, but we want to celebrate, we want to highlight, for instance, homeless shelters and housing authorities that are working and sharing data between schools and the housing authority to understand who's chronically absent and then how we can support those students. We see this work happening in the health space. We see this work happening in the justice space. It's not the norm, but we hope through Every Student Every Day and with your support that we can make it much more likely that in any given community they're working across sectors, they're sharing data in compliance, of course, with federal law and student and family privacy rights, but sharing the kind of data that gets children the supports and the interventions they need to be successful in school and in life. This is information. I won't go through the whole list here, but this is the Every Student Every Day resource package as part of this initiative. As you can see, it's pretty comprehensive, and I hope we can make these slides available to participants afterwards, but you can visit that link on the ed.gov website to access information about all of those resources as part of the Every Student Every Day initiative.
And yes, the slides are available on the group's Google Drive.
Thank you. And then finally, just want to let you know that beginning next month, you may notice in your major urban area, they don't have a list of where we're going to launch this initially available to me just yet. But in at least 10 major urban areas across the country, the Ad Council will begin promoting the Absences Add Up campaign with billboards and bus signs and subway signs to really get people to understand what chronic absence is, how it affects children. I believe some of them are going to use the heuristic that you saw earlier, 2 absences per month times 9 months of school equals chronic absence. It's that simple, and we need to get that message out, and the Mott Foundation and the Ad Council are going to help us do that. There will also be a website called Absences Add Up that will be part of that national campaign that will link families and parents to supportive services in their local communities if their child is struggling with chronic absenteeism. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening to all of that information. And if there's time, I'm happy to answer questions, or I can also wait until the end of the next presentation to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. It doesn't look like we have any questions in our public chat or Q&A box. Just as a reminder to our participants on the call, you can definitely put in any questions you have in either of those areas. But I think given that we don't have any just yet, we'll go ahead and switch over to the second presentation, and we're going to have Lenita Wheeler give us a view of how some of this chronic absenteeism work looks a bit more on the ground and with the Oakland Housing Authority. Lenita, are you there? Lenita?
Yes, it seems that there was a delay with the mute being released for me. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you now. That's perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I am coming to you from the West Coast out here in California in the Bay Area in the lovely city of Oakland. And I want to extend thanks to CLPHA for raising awareness on this issue of absenteeism. The Oakland Housing Authority, sorry, I'm not seeing my little slides here to move to the next slide.
Do you see the slides? I can move them for you. Do you want me to move to this slide?
That'd be great. I don't see the button to advance it.
There we go.
So the Oakland Housing Authority, just some brief overview, we're governed by a 7-member board, 2 of which are residents. We assist approximately 16,000 residents through subsidy. The bulk of them are Section 8 families, and there are approximately over 5,000 property owners The Housing Authority has about 350 staff, including our own police department. The next slide, please. Just to let you know, we absolutely believe that while our core function is to be a landlord, that you absolutely must address the entire person. The next slide. Our education initiative and work on absenteeism lives within the Family and Community Partnerships Department, which is a department that I'm over. It was formed in 2010 to combine our existing and newly initiated resident programs, such as the one on absenteeism that I'll be speaking with you about. Our goal is to improve the outcomes and opportunities for families and support a path to self-sufficiency. The next slide. Thank you so much. This is just a flow chart of how our families get referred to services, and of course the education initiative lives again within my department, which is the focus of the presentation. It's on the bottom right hand of the flow chart. Next slide. Our education initiative here at the Oakland Housing Authority has some main focus areas. School attendance, which includes enrolling in kindergarten on time. Some of you may or may not be surprised to hear how many families don't think enrolling in kindergarten is important because the children are so young. Of course, we focus on attendance, third grade literacy, which has correlations to attendance, high school graduation, and the option for our families to enroll in college or vocational career path. Our goal is to break the intergenerational poverty cycle of our families and to absolutely transform communities. And again, you'll just see on the right-hand side of this slide, we are stating again what the long-term goals are for all of our youth. Next slide. So several years ago, the Oakland Housing Authority Executive Director and the former Superintendent of Oakland Unified School District began conversations around barriers that our families were facing, and they began to address some shared challenges. And as part of the school year strategic plan, they reached out to the Housing Authority, and we reached back and said, let's see how we can work together on this issue of our families having challenges in both housing and both the school districts. The next slide. Something that resulted from that is a data sharing MOU, and I believe Joaquin had mentioned in some of his presentations, best practices, how this is something that is supporting communities with impacting their chronic absenteeism. It was developed between the two institutions over a few years, and we work directly with the school district's research and development staff department. We have meetings with them quarterly. We have a schedule of when data is exchanged. And essentially what happens is the Oakland Housing Authority sends over a list to the school district, and we say, these are all of the youth who live with us who are between 4.5 and 19 years old. The school district then matches that to their records, and they share with us, of the students that are living with us in housing, how many of them are attending schools in the district. And then they also go further in sharing with us, of the students that live in housing, and this could be receiving a subsidy for any type of housing. It's not limited to public housing or Section 8. Of those students, how many of them are having challenges with chronic absenteeism? What are their reading proficiency levels? What are their general demographics? How many of them are graduating high school? And how many of them are enrolling in college? We have the ability to compare that data for the Oakland Housing Authority residents and the Oakland Unified School District residents. And just to give you a sample of the data, currently there's about 40% of Oakland Housing Authority residents who are between those ages are attending school at our local Oakland Unified School District. And it's one thing of note is Oakland Unified School District does not require that you attend a school in their district if you're the City of Oakland resident. So some of our residents are attending charter schools or potentially attending schools in other cities that are nearby. So the Housing Authority worked with the district to find out where we could partner and bring the most value. For a pilot year, we exchanged data and looked at what was taking place between our families. And then we developed our more formal partnership, which we're implementing right now, and identified two key areas, which are chronic absenteeism and parent engagement. We are entering into our fifth year of partnership with the school district with Data Match, and into our second year of a particular program where families get to opt in, allowing us to support them with their challenges. And I'll talk about what that program is later on. Next slide. I believe Joaquin has already shared with everybody what chronic absenteeism is. No need for me to review that again. So some of the risk factors as well, as which he's identified for those who are not attending school regularly, crime and delinquency, dropping out of high school, and their literacy is impacted. Here at the Housing Authority, we naturally partner with our school district. Attendance Works, the campaign for grade level reading. And on the next slide, I will address the programs that we've implemented to address chronic absenteeism. We have a back to school campaign, and what we do in that is we host them at the East Oakland and West Oakland public housing sites, and they're literally within the streets and the neighborhood of where our residents are living. It's like a big fair. We have the jumper games for the kids, the face painting. There's usually someone there from a health clinic who is doing blood pressure checks. Someone will oftentimes offer exercise class. You can't be in the city of Oakland and not have Raider Nation come, and so we'll have, individuals from the Black Hole come with all of their garb, and the kids just absolutely love that. This is a way for us to begin to have the conversation with our families about school is coming, let's get ready for school, let's get prepared for school. We also have the school district staff there with enrollment information. We're giving away books. It's really a fun day. We also have a call campaign, which is one of the ways we use the data match that we receive from the district. So we know how many of our residents who are living with us, who are attending school at the district, how many of them are at risk for chronic absenteeism, how many of them are experiencing moderate chronic absenteeism, and how many of them are experiencing severe chronic absenteeism. And what we do is we literally call about 1,000 families or so who are in the severe and moderate categories, and we essentially hold a pep rally for them over the phone, and we're reminding them when the first day of school is and where to go for enrollments, and please contact our Family and Community Partnerships Department in the event they need help with anything that could be a barrier to them having their child ready for school and enrolled. We'll support them with getting the necessary vaccinations, assisting them if school uniforms are in need, supplying bus passes, and some families also need assistance with food. We will also mix the medicine in with the sugar, if you would, by offering a backpack giveaway to these families that we know are also challenged and experiencing difficulties within the Housing Authority. And those backpacks are loaded with the supplies from the school district. We get from them each year the list that they're going to give the elementary and middle school students for needed supplies for the upcoming school year. Our Family Education and Achievement Project. So what we have with our data match from the school district is just that. It's just data. It's letting us know what's going on. But we do not have any ability in which to actually impact those families directly around intervention, or why are they having the challenges with getting their young people to school, what's going on. And so what the Oakland Housing Authority has done is we have identified 7 partner schools in the district where we are going to focus our efforts in addressing the chronic absenteeism and encourage our families to opt in with us. Once the families opt in, we can now get access to their attendance records. Specifically, was it an excused absence? Was it an unexcused absence? Are there absences happening all on Fridays, or are there any other trends? It's a 3-year opt-in that our families have, and what they receive is priority access to other programs and services in the Housing Authority as well as the school. They also receive regular check-ins from one of our coordinators, as well as an assessment that we review with them, and the creation of what we're calling a success plan. And we're going to focus not just on their school attendance, but on what's occurring in the entire family. How are they doing health-wise? How are they doing transportation-wise, and so forth. Next slide. One of the criterion for, I want to share with you, we have had in the last 2 summers as many as 31 families opt in with us. Currently, we have 24 families opted in. The reason there's a change is because our schools where we have the partnerships are currently elementary schools, and we have 1 middle school. So it's possible a family enrolled a 5th grader, and then this school year they went to the 6th grade and they moved to a middle school that's not one of our partner schools. So we'll experience some attrition in that way. The bulk of the families who have opted in with us currently have students in grades 2 through 4, although families who have opted in with us are represented in grades 1 through 8. We have yet to get families with children in kindergarten to opt in with us. Some of the main barriers that we have identified with our initial families who have opted in is health. The children are having health problems and or the parent is having health problems, and asthma is one of the greatest health problems for the child. And so with those families, we support them with getting the proper medical attention or medication or care, as well as working on any individual education plans that may be necessary for those students to have their work completed. The next barrier that is significant for our families is transportation. Because the school district does not require that you have to go to school in the district or even go to the school that's in your neighborhood around the corner, many of our families are choosing to enroll their students in schools all over the city, and some of them are not able to make it through traffic or on time across the city or to Midtown to get their young ones in school. Or some families have multiple children who are not going to the same school, but those schools start within, 10 to 20 minutes of each other, and they just aren't able to get them there at the same time, and they don't have that additional family support. And we're also experiencing motivation of parents as a challenge with getting their students to school on time. We're seeing that this is related to some health issues for the parents. If they're not feeling well, or if they have anxiety, or there are some mental health challenges, it impacts the student's ability to get to school. And also the parents' own experiences with school play a factor into their motivation to getting their children there, particularly in instances in which that parent did not have a positive elementary or middle or high school experience for themselves. Next slide. So we have partner schools, 7 of them. 3 of them are in West Oakland, 4 of them are in East Oakland. The criterion that was used to identify how we would partner is that the school principal and the school site staff had to have bought in and been excited and willing to participate in the partnership. The school had to have the ability to contribute some resources, such as their staff time, such as any of the supports that can be provided through the district. And over 30% of the students needed to be OHA residents and having challenges with chronic absenteeism. Next slide. So there's significant research that shows that if you increase parent engagement, you'll achieve better outcomes for your child in school. And it doesn't matter if it's that actual child's parent participating more in that school environment, but just for more parents in general to be participating in the school culture. And parent engagement is one of the 2 focus areas of our partnership with the school district, in addition to focusing specifically on attendance and chronic absenteeism. The next slide. Some outcomes that are achieved when you increase the parent engagement are improved school readiness, higher student achievement, better social skills and behavior, as well as the increased likelihood of high school graduation. What the Oakland Housing Authority does to support parent engagement is we actually have parents who are residents living with us placed in the schools to behave as teachers' aides and parent navigators for other parents. If you would go to the next slide, please. They receive stipends. They're OHA residents with an interest in supporting education. They have extensive training. They receive a leadership training from the Housing Authority that lasts for about 12 weeks. They also receive attendance training directly from Attendance Works and the school district. They'll also receive training on school policies, such as mandated reporting. They work from 9 months out of the school year, and they assist with some of the other activities that we provide for families as well, such as the block parties, back-to-school nights. They are on the school campuses modeling for other parents how to participate in the school culture. They are serving as assistants and liaisons to the principals so they can have a finger on the pulse of what's happening with their families and community members. And they're assisting families with with navigating the school grounds and school culture. And they also help the families feel more comfortable with knowing that it's okay for parents to participate in the school culture. Next slide. This is a flow chart of an attendance project that is rolled out into the schools to increase parents getting their students to school every day and getting there on time. All of the parent ambassador projects must focus on attendance and or parent engagement. And they have the ability to work with the principals to design projects that are going to support their schools in the best way. And again, I can't overemphasize the importance of teacher and administration buy-in being essential to the project success. In this instance, students who attend school every day on time or improve their attendance, they receive a raffle ticket. And at the end of the week or at the end of the month, it's at the discretion of the school personnel. The students can have their raffles pulled out of a bucket to identify who will receive a prize. And the students are just excited about getting all of the prizes, so much so that they put pressure on their parents to get them to school. Each school can determine if they're going to have a grade competition, or will the attendance take place in just one particular class? Will it be school-wide? It varies from a site to site. The parents of the students who have improved and perfect attendance for the time frame of the project also receive incentives. And this is significant to us because we want them to recognize that they also benefit and have an investment in getting their students to school every day and on time. We have seen improvements in students the most who are at risk for chronic absenteeism or who have moderate chronic absenteeism, and they've moved up. If they were moderate, they've moved to at risk, or if they were at risk, they moved to satisfactory, or so on. And what happens is we've seen 13% of students at the beginning of this school year who were enrolled in FEEP had perfect attendance for the first quarter of the school year. We're very excited about that. Next slide, please. So we focus on attendance year-round, and we offer activities to help our families with establishing and maintaining a routine of showing up on some place, on enrolling their child, on registering their child, as well as reinforcing their academic skills. The next slide. The ways that we do that is we'll host programs around youth employment for teenagers. We'll offer summer lunch at our housing sites. We'll partner with our police department on exposing young children to areas where they haven't been before with bike trips or hiking trips, things of that nature. We're wanting for our families and our youth to understand that school culture behavior, and attendance, being present and showing up is something that's important all year inside the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. Next slide. And so this slide is just a flow chart created by Oakland Reads 2020 connecting how third grade literacy, school readiness, summer learning, family engagement, and attendance are all related to one another, which is why the Housing Authority targets on the focus areas that we do. And next slide. This is the final slide where it's just, I've given some photos of some of the various activities that we have for our youth. There's one on the bottom left showing a backpack giveaway, and students receive free books in their backpack as well. And then finally, the last slide is just contact information for myself and the Family and Community Partnerships Department. And is it okay to answer? I see a couple of questions in public chat.
Yep, exactly. We've got a couple questions, the first being from Rachel, and this was asked around that backpack giveaway slide, so asking about if the services staff were making the calls to families.
This is something that actually our entire agency participates in, and individuals look forward to it all year. Our finance department, our Section 8 department, our property management department, we receive volunteers from all over, and this is a way for many departments who don't interact directly with our families each year to have the opportunity to speak with them and talk with them. The resident services staff and our interns will also participate in those calls. We make calls to ensure that families are attending the first day of school, the first week of school, and the first month of school, as well as the first quarter of school. The entire agency participates in the reminder for the first day. After that, it's just the resident services department, and we have taken advantage of the robocall system because so many calls need to be made.
Got it. And about the parent ambassadors, are they volunteers or paid? What is
Our parent ambassadors receive a stipend for their work. They work no more than 10 hours per week at the school site, and they will also participate in additional activities such as our block parties, our backpack giveaways, and many have been tapped as speakers for the school district to participate in school district parent engagement activities, student fairs, enrollment events as well.
Great. And then I have a question as well. I know you mentioned for the pilot you've been or focused on, or it's been several years now, but you have sort of an opt-in form. Is that something you'd be able to make available to that's something that we're working on, and I was curious if you were comfortable making that available to other housing authorities.
I will find out what leadership feels about that.
Sure.
I don't believe anyone has asked before, so I will look into that, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? If you can put them in the public chat. Otherwise, we are coming right up on time, so I know the presentations will be available in the Google Drive.
These were both really fantastic presentations, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from the Department of Education and other federal agencies with, as they continue to develop more guidance and things like that around sharing. I know that that's really important for a lot of you on the call. So it's really fantastic, great to always hear about the wonderful work our members are doing. Slides are already up in the Google Drive, and then, as I said, once the recordings are available, it usually takes our webinar company a couple days to get those to me. I will go ahead and upload that to the Google Drive as well. So I'm not seeing any final questions. Thank you so much to our presenters, to Cassie, and to all of you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.